Alex.
The horror thriller Final Destination 2000 was directed by James Wong and quickly became one of the most unique supernatural movies ever made. Made with a budget of around $23 million, the film shocked audiences with its terrifying concept that no one can escape death's design. The story begins with a group of high school students preparing for a school trip to Paris. Among them is a quiet but intelligent teenager named Alex Browning, who is traveling with his classmates and teachers for what should be a fun and memorable vacation. The students are excited, joking with each other, and imagining the amazing time they will have in France. But Alex begins to feel strangely uneasy as they board the plane, as if something terrible is about to happen. This uneasy feeling slowly grows stronger, creating a mysterious tension that even Alex himself cannot explain. If you enjoy intense movie stories like this, don't forget to like the video, follow the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. As the students settle into their seats on the airplane, Alex's anxiety keeps increasing. The plane, Flight 180, begins preparing for takeoff while the passengers chat and laugh around him. Alex notices several strange details around him, small things that seem normal but somehow feel wrong. A nervous passenger argues with a flight attendant. Someone drops a drink, and the plane engine makes a strange sound. Suddenly, Alex experiences something unbelievable. In a terrifying vision, he sees the entire plane explode in mid-air, killing everyone on board in a massive fiery disaster. The vision feels completely real to him. He sees the flames spreading through the cabin, passengers screaming, metal tearing apart, and the plane breaking into pieces high above the ocean. In the vision, Alex himself dies in the explosion along with all his friends. Alex suddenly wakes up from the vision in extreme panic, realizing that he is still sitting in his seat before takeoff. The plane has not yet left the ground, but the terrifying images feel too real to ignore. Alex becomes convinced that the disaster he saw is about to happen for real. In fear and desperation, he starts shouting and warning everyone that the plane will explode. His sudden panic shocks the other passengers and embarrasses his classmates. The teachers try to calm him down, but Alex refuses to sit quietly. He begins yelling loudly, insisting that everyone must get off the plane immediately. His behavior quickly creates chaos inside the cabin, forcing the airline staff to intervene. Because of Alex's uncontrollable panic, the airline security decides to remove him from the plane. A few other students and one teacher are also forced to leave because of the argument and disturbance that breaks out among them. Among those leaving the plane are Alex's best friend Todd Wagner, his rival Carter Horton, Carter's girlfriend Terry Cheney, and another student named Billy Hitchcock. One of their teachers also steps off the plane to handle the situation. The group stands at the airport gate watching the aircraft from the terminal window, while Alex desperately tries to explain that the plane is about to explode. Most of them think Alex has completely lost his mind and blame him for ruining their trip. But just moments later, something shocking happens. As the group argues inside the airport terminal, they suddenly hear a massive explosion outside. When they look through the glass windows, they see the airplane bursting into flames shortly after takeoff. Exactly like Alex described in his vision, the aircraft explodes in the sky and breaks apart into burning debris that falls toward the ground. Everyone in the airport watches in horror as the disaster unfolds. Alex and the others who were removed from the plane realize that they have just escaped certain death. The terrifying vision Alex experienced was not just a dream, it was somehow a warning about the future. News of the disaster quickly spreads everywhere, and investigators begin questioning Alex and the other survivors. Authorities become suspicious because Alex predicted the exact accident moments before it happened. Some investigators even believe Alex might know more about the explosion than he admits. Meanwhile, the surviving students struggle to process what just happened. They feel relief for being alive, but also deep shock and guilt because many of their classmates died in the crash. Alex himself becomes increasingly disturbed by the idea that he somehow saw the future. He cannot understand how such a thing could happen, but one thing becomes clear to him. They were never supposed to survive that flight. As days pass, the survivors try to return to their normal lives. But an eerie feeling follows them everywhere. Strange coincidences begin happening around them, and Alex slowly starts noticing patterns that make him uncomfortable. It begins to feel like the universe is trying to correct something that went wrong. The group escaped the plane crash, but Alex starts to fear that death may still be coming for them. He becomes obsessed with the idea that their survival disrupted a natural order. If his theory is true, then the disaster they escaped might only be the beginning of something far more terrifying. The survivors soon realize that escaping the plane crash may not mean they escaped death itself. Somewhere in the shadows, an invisible force seems to be watching them. The terrifying idea slowly forms in Alex's mind. What if death has a design, a plan that cannot be cheated? If that design was interrupted when they left the plane, then maybe death will return to finish what it started. Alex begins studying the details of his vision and the order in which people were supposed to die in the explosion. What he discovers will soon lead the survivors into a nightmare far worse than the plane crash itself, because death does not like its plans being changed, and it may be coming back to claim each of them one by one. After surviving the explosion of Flight 180, life is no longer normal for Alex Browning and the other survivors. The media attention slowly fades, but the psychological trauma refuses to disappear. Alex Browning becomes increasingly withdrawn, constantly replaying the terrifying vision in his mind. He cannot ignore the disturbing detail that the explosion happened exactly as he saw it. Every small moment from his premonition feels important now. While the others try to move forward and pretend everything is fine, Alex feels something darker lingering around them. It is not just survivor's guilt, it feels like unfinished business, as if the plane crash was only the first chapter of something far more dangerous. Among the survivors, tension begins to grow. Carter Horton blames Alex for humiliating him at the airport and refuses to believe any supernatural explanation. Carter believes they were simply lucky to get off the plane. His girlfriend, Terry Cheney, tries to calm him down, but fear quietly lives in her eyes too. Meanwhile, Alex's closest friend, Todd Wagner, seems disturbed but supportive. Another survivor, Clear Rivers, begins paying closer attention to Alex's theory. Clear is different from the others, quiet, thoughtful, and open to the possibility that something unnatural is happening. Days later, the first shocking event occurs. Todd is alone at home in his bathroom. What starts as a completely normal morning slowly turns into something terrifying. Water drips near electrical wires, a slippery floor creates imbalance, and small objects fall unexpectedly. The atmosphere becomes tense, as if invisible hands are carefully arranging every detail. In a horrifying chain of events, Todd slips and accidentally strangles himself with a clothesline wire. It looks like a tragic accident, something that could happen to anyone, but the timing is too disturbing. Todd was supposed to die first in Alex's original vision of the plane explosion. Alex immediately realizes something terrifying. Death is following the exact order of the plane seating arrangement. When news of Todd's death spreads, authorities suspect suicide. But Alex knows better. He tries explaining to the others that Todd's death was not random. It was meant to happen on the plane. Because Todd escaped the explosion, death found another way to take him. Most of the survivors refuse to believe this theory. It sounds insane. But Cleo listens carefully. She begins to notice how strange Todd's accident was. Too many coincidences happened at once. It felt designed. Slowly, fear begins creeping into her mind as well. If Todd was first on death's list, then someone else must be next. Alex becomes obsessed with understanding the pattern. He studies his original premonition, trying to remember every detail: who sat where, who died in what order. He realizes that the survivors are now dying according to that exact sequence. The terrifying truth forms clearly in his mind. They interrupted Death's plan, and now Death is correcting it step by step. The idea that death itself has a design feels impossible, yet the evidence is unfolding right in front of them. One by one, the survivors may fall unless they figure out how to break the pattern. Soon, another tragedy strikes in a way no one expects. Terry and Carter are standing outside, arguing near a busy road. Carter, frustrated and angry, steps onto the street recklessly, as if daring fate to prove him wrong. Alex tries warning him again about Death's order. In the middle of their heated argument, something sudden and brutal happens. A speeding bus appears out of nowhere and violently strikes Terry, killing her instantly. The shocking accident happens so quickly that no one has time to react. In one terrifying second, she is gone. The randomness of the moment is horrifying, but to Alex, it is not random at all. Terry was next in the sequence. The survivors are now shaken beyond denial. Two of them are dead in exactly the order Alex predicted. Even Carter can no longer fully ignore the pattern. Fear replaces anger in his eyes. Clea becomes closer to Alex, realizing that staying near him might be the only chance of survival. Meanwhile, investigators continue watching Alex carefully, suspecting that his predictions are too accurate to be coincidence. The pressure around him increases from all sides. Not only is death coming closer, but law enforcement also sees him as suspicious. As Alex and Clear dig deeper into their theory, they start noticing warning signs before each accident. Subtle clues in the environment, wind blowing strangely, objects moving slightly, shadows shifting. It is as if death announces its arrival quietly before striking. Alex begins believing that if they can recognize the signs early enough, maybe they can interrupt the pattern again. Maybe they can cheat death a second time. But every attempt feels like trying to outsmart something invisible and unstoppable. The fear among the remaining survivors grows stronger each day. No place feels safe anymore. Not home, not school, not even outside in public. Simple objects become threats: kitchen knives, electric wires, passing cars, slippery floors. The world itself feels like a giant trap waiting to activate. Alex realizes they are not just fighting accidents, they are fighting a force that manipulates accidents. Death does not chase them directly, it sets the stage and lets ordinary life become deadly. As the pattern continues unfolding, one terrifying question remains: can death truly be defeated, or are they only delaying the inevitable? With every passing day, the number of survivors shrinks and the design becomes clearer. The nightmare that began with a vision on a plane is now fully awake. And if Alex's theory is correct, the next name on death's list is approaching fast, and there may be nothing they can do to stop it. The terrifying pattern of death is now impossible to ignore. After the shocking deaths of Todd Wagner and Terry Cheney, fear begins spreading among the remaining survivors of Flight 180. Alex Browning becomes even more determined to prove his theory that death is following a specific design. He spends hours trying to remember every detail from his terrifying vision on the airplane, every seat position, every face he saw in the burning cabin, every moment before the explosion. All of it now feels like a deadly puzzle that must be solved. Alex believes that if he can understand the exact order in which everyone was meant to die on the plane, he might be able to predict who death will target next. The only person who truly listens to Alex is Claire Rivers. Unlike the others, Claire has begun to accept that something supernatural might actually be happening. She feels a strange connection to Alex's warnings and starts helping him analyze the events of the crash. Together, they carefully recreate the seating charts of Flight 180. Alex explains that during his vision, he saw the explosion move through the plane in a specific sequence. Some passengers died instantly when the plane ripped apart, while others survived for a few seconds longer before the flames reached them. That sequence now seems to be repeating itself in real life. When Alex studies the order closely, he realizes something disturbing. After Todd and Terry, the next person in Death's sequence should be Carter Horton. Carter still refuses to believe Alex's theory completely, but the recent tragedies have clearly shaken his confidence. Alex desperately tries to warn him that he may be next. However, Carter's personality makes it difficult for him to accept fear. Instead of running from the idea of death, he reacts with anger and denial. Carter believes that if death is real, then he should confront it directly rather than live in constant panic. Meanwhile, Alex continues noticing strange signs before dangerous situations occur. The wind suddenly changes direction, objects move slightly on their own, and ordinary things begin forming deadly chains of accidents. It feels like the environment itself is being manipulated. Alex explains to Clea that death does not attack directly like a person. Instead, it carefully arranges everyday objects into a deadly sequence, creating accidents that appear completely natural. If someone interrupts the sequence, death simply rearranges another plan. This realization makes the situation even more terrifying because it means danger could exist anyway. As tension rises, Carter reaches a breaking point. Unable to handle the fear anymore, he decides to challenge death itself. One night, he drives his car to a railroad crossing and parks directly on the train tracks. With headlights shining in the darkness, Carter steps out of the vehicle and waits for the approaching train. He shouts angrily, daring Death to prove Alex's theory. In his mind, if nothing happens, then the entire idea of Death's design will be proven wrong. Alex and Clea rush to the scene after hearing what Carter is planning. They beg him to move before it is too late. Suddenly, the distant sound of a train horn echoes through the night. The massive train begins racing toward the crossing at full speed. Carter tries to move his car but realizes it has become stuck on the tracks. Panic replaces his earlier confidence. The seconds begin counting down as the train approaches closer and closer. Alex quickly realizes something important. According to the sequence, Carter is not supposed to die yet. Someone else must still come before him. Acting quickly, Alex pulls Carter away from the car just moments before the train crashes into it, destroying the vehicle completely. This moment creates a shocking realization. Alex understands that if someone interferes with that sequence, the order can change. Carter was supposed to die later, so Death's attempt failed when Alex pulled him away. But this also means the pattern will continue moving forward toward the next person. For the survivors, this discovery offers a small piece of hope. Maybe Death's design can be interrupted again, but at the same time, it proves something even more terrifying. Death will not stop trying. After the railroad incident, Alex becomes more convinced than ever that they must study the pattern carefully if they want to survive. Every survivor now lives under constant fear, knowing that the next accident could happen at any moment. Even normal places like kitchens, bathrooms, streets, and classrooms feel dangerous. Small details, a leaking pipe, a falling object, a loose wire, could suddenly become part of a deadly chain reaction. The world itself seems to have turned into a trap designed by an invisible force. While Alex and Clea search desperately for a way to break the pattern, they begin to realize that death may be far more patient than they are. It does not rush, it waits for the perfect moment when all pieces fall into place. Each survivor who escapes one accident only delays the inevitable for a short time. The question haunting Alex now is not just who will die next, but whether anyone can truly escape death's design forever. The nightmare that started with a vision on an airplane is becoming darker with every passing day. The survivors are running out of time, and death's list is still far from complete. Somewhere within the invisible pattern lies the key to survival, but discovering it may require risking their lives again And as the tension grows, Alex realizes that the next deadly accident could already be forming around them, waiting silently for the perfect moment to strike. After the terrifying incident at the railroad crossing, Alex Browning becomes even more convinced that death truly follows a carefully designed pattern. Saving Carter Horton from the train proved something important. The sequence can be interrupted, but only temporarily. Death does not simply give up when someone escapes. Instead, it rearranges its plan and waits for another opportunity. This realization makes the situation even more dangerous because the survivors now understand that every second of their lives could be part of a deadly chain reaction they cannot see. Alex continues studying every detail from his original vision of the plane explosion. With help from clear rivers, he carefully reconstructs the exact order in which the passengers were supposed to die. According to the pattern, the next person after Terry should have been Carter, but because Alex saved him at the railroad crossing, the sequence has shifted again. Now the next name on death's list becomes clear: Billy Hitchcock. Billy has always been the nervous and easily frightened member of the group, and hearing Alex's explanation only makes his fear worse. Billy tries to stay calm, but the growing tension around him becomes unbearable. Every small noise or sudden movement makes him jump. He begins noticing the same strange warning signs Alex talked about: gusts of wind appearing at random moments, objects shifting slightly, and the environment feeling strangely hostile. It is as if the world itself is preparing something dangerous. Billy starts following Alex and Clear everywhere, believing that staying close to them might help him survive. Unfortunately, Death's design is already quietly setting its next trap. Meanwhile, investigators continue watching Alex closely. One of them, a suspicious FBI agent named Agent Wine, becomes convinced that Alex somehow knows more about the deaths than he admits. The fact that Alex predicted the plane explosion and now seems able to predict the order of the accidents makes him look extremely suspicious. Authorities begin treating him like a possible suspect instead of a victim. This creates even more pressure on Alex because he must now avoid both Death's design and the growing suspicion of law enforcement. The survivors soon attend a memorial gathering for the classmates who died in the plane crash. The atmosphere is heavy with sadness as friends and families remember the victims. Alex notices how uncomfortable the remaining survivors look. Each of them knows that their survival may only be temporary. While the crowd mourns the dead, Alex quietly studies his surroundings again, searching for the warning signs he has learned to recognize. The wind shifts slightly, leaves move across the ground, and a strange sense of tension fills the air. Alex suddenly realizes that death might be preparing another accident right here. As the memorial ends and people begin leaving, the survivors gather near the street outside the building. Billy nervously talks with Alex and Carter while trying to calm himself down. Everything seems normal for a brief moment, but Alex notices something strange: pieces of metal debris hanging loosely from a passing train near the street. His instincts immediately tell him that something is wrong. Before he can react properly, a sudden chain of events begins unfolding faster than anyone can predict. A piece of sharp metal debris suddenly breaks loose from the speeding train and flies violently through the air. In a split second, it strikes Billy directly, killing him instantly in a horrifying accident. The moment is so sudden and brutal that the others barely have time to understand what happened. 1 second Billy is standing beside them, and the next second he is gone. The terrifying randomness of the event leaves everyone frozen in shock. But for Alex, the message is clear. Death's design has continued exactly as he predicted. Now the number of survivors has become even smaller. The pattern is unfolding step by step, and no one seems able to stop it completely. Carter is shaken by Billy's death because he knows he was supposed to be next earlier. Claire becomes even more determined to help Alex understand the pattern before it reaches them. The reality of their situation is now undeniable. Escaping the plane crash only delayed their fate, and death is patiently reclaiming each life it originally planned to take. Alex begins thinking deeper about the rules of death's design. If the sequence can be interrupted once, perhaps it can be broken entirely. But figuring out how to do that may require risking their lives again. The invisible force hunting them seems intelligent, adjusting its plans whenever something interferes. Every accident feels carefully arranged, as if death itself is watching their every move and waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. With Billy now gone, the survivors know the next stage of the nightmare is approaching quickly. The pattern continues moving forward, and the list of remaining names is becoming shorter. Alex realizes that if they cannot discover a way to defeat Death's design soon, the final survivors will simply continue dying one by one. The question that now haunts them all is terrifying. Can anyone truly escape death forever, or is survival only a temporary delay before the inevitable finally arrives? The pattern that Alex Browning predicted is unfolding exactly as he feared. One by one, the survivors who escaped the plane explosion are dying in strange accidents that appear natural but feel carefully arranged. At this point, Alex is no longer doubting his theory. He is now completely certain that death itself is correcting the mistake that happened when they left the airplane. The order of the original disaster is repeating in the real world, and the list of survivors is growing dangerously small. Only a few people remain alive now, including Alex, Clear Rivers, and Carter Horton. Carter, who once mocked Alex's warnings, has now completely changed his attitude. After witnessing the brutal deaths of Todd, Terry, and Billy, he can no longer ignore the terrifying pattern. Fear begins controlling his behavior as he realizes that he was once next in the sequence. Carter now understands that if Alex had not pulled him away from the train earlier, he would already be dead. Meanwhile, the pressure from investigators continues to grow around Alex. Authorities believe that it is far too suspicious for one person to predict so many deadly accidents in advance. The fact that Alex was the only person who warned everyone about the plane explosion makes him look even more suspicious in their eyes. One of the investigators, Agent Wine, becomes convinced that Alex might somehow be responsible for the deaths. He begins following Alex closely, hoping to catch him revealing the truth behind the mysterious pattern. As the situation becomes more intense, Alex starts focusing completely on understanding the rules of death's design. He explains to Clear that death does not attack randomly. Instead, it uses a chain reaction of small events to create accidents that look completely natural. A loose object, a sudden gust of wind, a slippery surface. Each detail connects to the next until the final deadly moment occurs. Alex believes that if they can recognize the pattern early enough, they might be able to interrupt the sequence again before the accident happens. Clear begins helping Alex observe the warning signs more carefully. They notice that just before each death, strange disturbances appear in the environment. The wind begins moving in unusual ways, shadows shift slightly, and everyday objects suddenly become unstable. These small signs act almost like signals announcing that death is preparing another move. Understanding these signals might be their only chance to survive. However, Alex soon realizes something even more disturbing. Even if they stop one accident, death simply finds another path to complete its design. The invisible force behind these events seems patient and relentless. It waits quietly until the right combination of circumstances appears. Then it turns ordinary moments into deadly traps. This realization makes the survivors feel trapped in a nightmare where the entire world has become dangerous. The tension between Alex and the authorities also continues increasing. Investigators believe Alex is somehow manipulating the accidents or predicting them because he plans them himself. They cannot accept the idea that death itself might be responsible. As a result, Alex is forced to hide his investigations while also trying to save the remaining survivors. The pressure from both sides, law enforcement and death's design, begins pushing him to the edge. Despite the danger, Alex refuses to give up. He believes there must be a way to completely break the sequence. If they can find a rule within death's design, maybe they can exploit it. Alex starts studying the pattern even deeper, looking for something he may have missed earlier. His memory of the original vision becomes the most important clue. Every detail from that moment on the airplane might hold the key to survival. At the same time, the fear surrounding the survivors becomes overwhelming. Carter constantly feels like he is being watched by an invisible force. Clear becomes more cautious about every step she takes. Even simple daily activities feel dangerous now. Crossing the street, turning on electrical appliances, climbing stairs. Anything could suddenly become the start of another deadly chain reaction. Alex begins to understand that surviving this nightmare will require more than just predicting accidents. They must find a way to completely confuse death's design. If the sequence can be disrupted enough times, maybe it will lose track of them entirely. But discovering how to do that may require risking their lives again. As the remaining survivors struggle to stay alive, the invisible pattern continues moving forward. Death has already claimed several lives, and the list is almost finished. Somewhere within the chaos of these accidents lies the final secret of survival. But time is running out, and the next deadly event may already be forming around them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike once again. Every moment feels dangerous because the next deadly accident could happen anywhere. Alex becomes more obsessed than ever with solving the mystery behind Death's sequence. He believes that somewhere within the pattern lies a rule, a weakness that might allow them to escape permanently. While studying his original vision again, Alex suddenly realizes something important. In the explosion on the plane, every person died in a specific order based on their seat position. The fire spread through the aircraft step by step, taking lives exactly in that sequence. But when Alex and several others got off the plane, that order was interrupted. Now death is simply recreating the same sequence in the real world using accidents instead of an explosion. If that pattern continues, the remaining survivors will die one by one until the original design is completed. Alex shares this theory with Clear, explaining that death behaves almost like a system trying to correct an error. When someone escapes their original fate, death rearranges events until it can claim that life again. However, Alex also remembers something unusual about his vision. One passenger was sitting between two others who should have died in sequence, but the moment of death shifted slightly. That small detail might mean that the order is not completely fixed. If someone manages to break the pattern strongly enough, the sequence could change again. Meanwhile, investigators continue to suspect Alex. Agent Wine becomes convinced that Alex's knowledge about the accidents is too accurate to be coincidence. The agent believes Alex may be responsible for the deaths in some way and begins watching him more closely. This creates a dangerous situation for Alex because every attempt he makes to warn someone about an accident makes him look even more suspicious. Instead of seeing him as a victim, the authorities now treat him like a possible criminal. Despite the pressure, Alex continues trying to protect the remaining survivors. Carter Horton is still alive, but fear now controls his every action. The confident and arrogant personality he once had has been replaced by constant anxiety. Carter knows that if Alex's theory is correct, his survival at the railroad crossing only delayed his fate. The next accident could still target him at any moment. Even small noises make him panic, and every sudden movement feels like the beginning of another deadly chain reaction. Clear also begins taking extreme precautions. She isolates herself as much as possible, trying to avoid any environment that could create an accident. She carefully watches every object around her, from electrical wires to kitchen appliances, because she now understands how easily ordinary items can become part of death's design. But even with these precautions, the fear never disappears. The terrifying truth is that accidents can happen anywhere, and death always seems to find a way. Alex eventually comes to another disturbing conclusion. He realizes that each time someone escapes an accident, the sequence simply moves forward to the next person but later returns again. Death does not forget its list, it only adjusts the order temporarily. This means that even if Carter or Clear escapes once, the danger will come back again later. The design continues until every name in the original sequence has been claimed. While thinking about this pattern, Alex suddenly remembers something else from his vision: the possibility that new life might interrupt death's design. If someone who was not supposed to exist in the original sequence suddenly becomes part of the timeline, it could confuse the pattern completely. This idea is only a theory, but it offers a small piece of hope. If the sequence can be disrupted in the right way, death might lose control over the design entirely. However, before Alex can fully test this theory, another dangerous situation begins forming around them. Strange warning signs start appearing again: wind blowing in unnatural directions, objects falling slightly out of place, and electrical sparks appearing unexpectedly. Alex immediately recognizes these signals. They are the same signs that appeared before every previous accident. Death is preparing another attempt. The tension rises as Alex and Clear desperately search for the source of the danger. They know that once the chain reaction begins, events will unfold too quickly to stop. Every second becomes critical as they look for anything that could trigger the next accident. The invisible force that has been chasing them since the plane crash is now closer than ever. The nightmare of Flight 180 continues to grow darker with every passing moment. The survivors are running out of time, and Death's design is still unfinished. Alex understands that the final stage of the pattern is approaching quickly. If they cannot find a way to break the sequence soon, the remaining survivors may soon become the next victims of the same unstoppable force that destroyed the airplane in the sky. After studying the pattern of deaths for so long, Alex has become completely convinced that the accidents are not random at all. Each event is carefully arranged by Death's invisible design. Every loose object, every gust of wind, and every sudden malfunction seems to be part of a deadly sequence. Alex knows that if they fail to understand the rules behind this pattern, the remaining survivors will continue dying one by one until the original plan of the airplane disaster is completed. As Alex continues investigating the pattern, his relationship with Clear Rivers becomes stronger. Clear is now the only person who fully trusts his theory and believes that death itself is trying to correct the mistake of their survival. Together, they carefully analyze every previous accident, trying to find something that might reveal how to break the sequence completely. The more they study the events, the more they realize that death does not act randomly. It behaves almost like a system that patiently arranges the environment until a perfect chain reaction forms. Meanwhile, Carter Horton struggles with constant fear. Once arrogant and fearless, Carter is now haunted by the memory of Billy's sudden death. He understands that his own life was only saved temporarily when Alex pulled him away from the train tracks earlier. The terrifying thought that death may return for him at any moment keeps him in a state of anxiety. Even normal situations feel dangerous now. Walking near traffic, climbing stairs, or standing near heavy objects suddenly feels like stepping into a trap. At the same time, the pressure from investigators grows stronger. Agent Wine continues suspecting Alex of being connected to the accidents. The agent believes that Alex's predictions are far too accurate to be coincidence. As a result, Alex finds himself constantly watched and questioned by authorities who think he might somehow be responsible for the deaths. This makes his situation even more complicated because every attempt he makes to save someone only increases suspicion against him. Despite these obstacles, Alex refuses to stop searching for answers. He begins carefully analyzing the environment whenever strange warning signs appear. By now, he has noticed a pattern in the moments leading up to each accident. The wind begins moving unnaturally, objects shift slightly, and small disturbances appear in the surroundings. These signs seem to act like signals announcing that death is preparing its next move. Alex believes that if he can identify these signals early enough, he might be able to interrupt the chain reaction before the final deadly moment occurs. One evening, Alex suddenly experiences a disturbing feeling that reminds him of the moment before his original vision on the airplane. Small changes in the environment begin appearing around him again. Lights flicker slightly, objects fall unexpectedly, and the wind suddenly grows stronger. Alex immediately realizes what this means. Death is preparing another attempt to complete the sequence. The danger is closer than ever. Acting quickly, Alex begins searching desperately for the source of the coming accident. He knows that once the chain reaction begins, events will unfold too fast to stop. Every object in the environment becomes suspicious. Electrical wires, leaking water, unstable structures. Anything could become part of the deadly sequence. The tension grows as Alex and Cleo try to identify where the accident will happen before it is too late. During this intense moment, Alex suddenly receives another brief vision, not as powerful as the original premonition, but strong enough to reveal pieces of what might happen next. In this terrifying glimpse of the future, he sees Clea trapped in a dangerous situation involving electricity and water. The image is chaotic and unclear, but one thing is certain: Clea's life is about to be in serious danger. If the sequence continues normally, she may become the next victim of death's design. Without wasting a second, Alex rushes to find Clea before the vision becomes reality. His heart races as he realizes that the final stages of Death's plan are approaching quickly. Every moment now feels like a race against an invisible enemy that cannot be seen or touched. Alex knows that stopping this accident may be their last chance to disrupt the sequence completely. The terrifying truth now becomes clear. The survivors are reaching the final part of Death's design. If Alex fails to interrupt the next accident, the remaining names on the list will soon disappear one after another. The invisible force that has been hunting them since the airplane disaster is now preparing its most dangerous move yet. And this time, escaping it may require risking everything. Alex knows from experience that these glimpses of the future are never meaningless. The same type of vision once saved them from the explosion of Flight 180, and now another deadly accident may be about to happen. If Alex cannot stop the chain reaction in time, Clear could become the next victim of death's unstoppable design. Without wasting a moment, Alex rushes toward Clear's location, his mind racing with fear and urgency. Over the past days, he has learned to recognize the warning signs that appear before every deadly accident. As he moves through the streets, he begins noticing those same strange disturbances again. The wind suddenly grows stronger, electrical lights flicker slightly, and objects around him shift in small but suspicious ways. These signs confirm his worst fear. Death is already preparing the next sequence of events. Meanwhile, Cleo has isolated herself in her house, hoping that staying away from dangerous environments might help her survive. She has taken every possible precaution, carefully checking electrical outlets, avoiding slippery floors, and making sure nothing unstable is around her. But what she does not realize is that death's design does not rely on obvious dangers. Instead, it creates accidents using ordinary objects that suddenly connect in unpredictable ways. As Alex approaches the house, the tension becomes unbearable. He remembers the exact details from his vision: sparks of electricity, broken wires, and water spreading across the floor. These elements together could easily create a fatal accident. Alex realizes that if Clear touches an electrical source while standing in water, the result could be deadly within seconds. The chain reaction could already be forming around her without her realizing it. Inside the house, Clear begins hearing strange noises. At first, they seem harmless, like the normal sounds of a building settling, but then the lights flicker slightly, and a small electrical spark appears near a damaged wire. Water from a leaking pipe slowly begins spreading across the floor. Each small detail seems insignificant on its own, but together they create the exact type of dangerous sequence Alex has been trying to predict. The environment itself is slowly turning into a deadly trap. Just as the situation reaches its most dangerous point, Alex bursts into the house and quickly pulls Clear away from the electrical hazard. Only seconds later, a powerful electrical surge travels through the exposed wires and into the water covered floor where she had been standing. If Alex had arrived even a moment later, the result would have been fatal. Once again, Death's design has been interrupted at the last possible second. However, this victory does not bring relief. Instead, it creates a new realization for Alex. Every time he manages to save someone, the sequence simply moves forward and waits for another opportunity. Death does not disappear when it fails once. It patiently rearranges the circumstances until the accident can happen again. This means that even though Clea survived this attempt, She is still not safe. Meanwhile, investigators led by Agent Veen continue searching for Alex. From their perspective, Alex appears at the scene of every strange accident just before it happens. This makes him look extremely suspicious. The authorities believe he may somehow be responsible for manipulating the accidents or predicting them because he plans them himself. Alex now finds himself trapped between two threats: death's invisible design and the growing suspicion of law enforcement. After escaping the electrical accident, Alex and Clear take a moment to analyze what just happened. The pattern once again confirms Alex's theory that death operates through carefully arranged chains of events. However, something else also becomes clear. Alex's visions may be the only tool capable of interrupting the sequence. If he can see the accidents before they happen, there might still be a chance to stop death's design entirely. But the situation is far from over. The pattern of the original aeroplane explosion is still unfinished, and several names remain in the deadly sequence. Every time an accident is prevented, the tension grows stronger because death continues searching for another opportunity to complete its plan. As Alex looks around the room where the accident almost happened, he realizes something terrifying. The environment around them is constantly changing, and any small detail could become the start of another chain reaction. Death's design is patient, intelligent, and relentless. Even the smallest moment of carelessness could trigger the next deadly event. For Alex, Clea, and the few remaining survivors, the nightmare is entering its final stage. The sequence that began in the sky aboard Flight 180 is now approaching its conclusion on the ground. If they cannot find a way to break Death's design permanently, the remaining survivors may soon face the same fate as everyone who came before them, and somewhere nearby, the next accident may already be quietly preparing to happen. Before, death is not just following a sequence, it is actively adapting. Every time they manage to escape an accident, the next situation becomes more unpredictable and more aggressive. It feels like the invisible force behind Flight 180 is becoming frustrated, tightening its grip on the remaining survivors, trying harder each time to correct the mistake of their survival. Cleo is now fully convinced that Alex's theory is real, but that realization brings no comfort. Instead, it increases fear. She understands that even though she survived the last incident, there is no guarantee she will survive the next one. The house that once felt safe now feels like a trap filled with invisible danger. Every object seems suspicious: wires, water pipes, glass items, even furniture placement. It all feels like it could be part of another chain reaction waiting to trigger at any moment. Meanwhile, Carter Horton is also struggling under extreme psychological pressure. He can no longer deny the pattern of deaths, and the fear has completely changed him. The confident and aggressive personality he once had has collapsed into constant anxiety. He begins isolating himself, refusing to go near anything that could be dangerous. But the problem is that in this situation, danger exists everywhere. Carter realizes that avoiding everything is impossible because death does not require obvious threats, it creates them from normal life. At the same time, Agent Wien continues tightening the investigation around Alex. The agent is now fully convinced that Alex is the central link between all the deaths. Every incident seems to occur near him, and every prediction he makes turns out to be correct. However, what the agent does not understand is that Alex is not causing the deaths. He is trying to prevent them. But from an outside perspective, his actions look suspicious and dangerous, making his situation even more complicated. Alex, now exhausted and mentally overwhelmed, starts reviewing everything he has learned about the pattern. He realizes that death operates like a system that is trying to restore balance. When someone escapes their assigned death, the system does not stop. Instead, it recalculates and finds another way to complete the sequence. This means there is no safe pause in the pattern, only temporary delays. Each survivor is still locked into death's design until the entire sequence is completed. While studying this idea, Alex begins to notice something deeper. The accidents are not just random physical events, they are interconnected in a way that suggests precision timing. One small action triggers another, which leads to another, until the final result becomes inevitable. It is like a domino effect controlled by an invisible intelligence. This makes Alex realize that to survive, they would need to break the chain completely before it even begins, something that may not be possible once the sequence is in motion. Suddenly, another disturbing change occurs in the environment. The familiar warning signs return: flickering lights, sudden wind shifts, and unstable objects. Alex immediately recognizes these signals as the beginning of another chain reaction, but this time it feels different, stronger, faster, almost as if death is accelerating its efforts to finish what it started. Alex warns Clea and Carter that something is about to happen, but the exact location of the next accident is unclear. The uncertainty makes it even more dangerous. Unlike previous situations where they could identify a specific object or place, this time the entire environment feels unstable. It could be anywhere, any object, any movement, any moment. As tension builds, Alex comes to a frightening realization. The remaining survivors are now reaching the final stage of the original plane sequence. That means death is close to completing its full design. Once the sequence is complete, there may be no more survivors left to target, or worse, death may start a new cycle entirely. The group is now trapped in a race against an invisible force that cannot be seen or reasoned with. Every second counts, and every decision could mean life or death. Alex knows that the next accident could be the most important one yet, the one that decides whether the sequence can be broken or whether it will continue until the very end. As the atmosphere grows heavier and more unpredictable, the survivors realize they are no longer just avoiding accidents. They are running out of time before death completes its final correction. And somewhere in the shifting chaos of everyday life, the next deadly chain reaction is already beginning to form. Alex is exhausted, both mentally and physically, but his mind is sharper than ever. He now fully understands the terrifying reality. Death is not random, and it is not emotional, it is systematic. Every survivor is part of a sequence that began the moment the plane was supposed to explode. Every escape has only delayed the inevitable, never removed it. The pattern is nearly complete. Clea, though terrified, refuses to give up. She stays close to Alex, believing that understanding the pattern fully might still offer a chance to survive. But even she can feel it now. Something in the environment has changed. The usual warning signs are no longer subtle. They are stronger, more direct, as if the world itself is preparing for a final correction. Katahotin is also still alive, but he is no longer the same person. Fear has completely consumed him. He understands now that survival is not freedom, it is just waiting. Every second feels like the calm before an unavoidable disaster. He begins to realize that no matter what he does, he cannot escape the sequence forever. Meanwhile, Agent Veen continues closing in on Alex, still convinced he is somehow responsible for the deaths. The misunderstanding between them grows more dangerous as time runs out. Alex tries one last time to explain that he is not causing anything. He is trying to stop something that cannot be seen or controlled. But there is no time left for explanations. Alex begins focusing on the final remaining clue from his original vision. He remembers the exact moment before the explosion, the smallest details that might hold the key to breaking the sequence permanently. He now believes that Death's design can only be defeated if the chain reaction is interrupted at its very source before it fully completes. But the problem is simple and terrifying. The sequence is already in motion, and there may be no clear way to stop it anymore. As the final moments approach, the environment becomes increasingly unstable. Objects shift slightly without reason, sounds echo at strange times, and the air itself feels heavy with anticipation. Alex realizes that death no longer needs complex setups. It can now trigger an accident almost instantly if the conditions align. Suddenly, everything escalates. A final chain reaction begins forming around the remaining survivors. Every small detail in the environment starts connecting: movement, pressure, timing, and chance, all aligning into something deadly. Alex immediately recognizes the pattern forming again, but this time it is faster than before. There is almost no time to react. In a desperate attempt, Alex tries to break the sequence one last time by moving the survivors out of danger. He pushes, pulls, and warns them, trying to interrupt the chain before it completes. For a moment, it feels like there might still be hope, like the pattern might finally break under resistance. But that does not stop. The chain reaction continues, adjusting instantly to every interference. What was meant for one target shifts to another path. The environment itself seems to correct every attempt to escape. Alex realizes the horrifying truth. They are not escaping death's design. They are simply being moved through it. In the final moment, everything aligns. The sequence completes exactly as it was originally meant to. The survivors are overwhelmed by the unstoppable chain of events, and one by one, the design reaches its conclusion. Alex's vision of the airplane explosion was never just a warning, it was a blueprint, and Death has finally finished rebuilding it in reality. In the aftermath, nothing feels resolved, only quiet, as if the world has reset itself. The survivor's fate proves the central truth of the nightmare. You can delay death, you can interrupt it, but you cannot escape its design forever. And somewhere, hidden in the silence after the final accident, the idea remains that Death's List is never truly finished, only waiting for the next time someone manages to escape it again.